one. Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Real Estate Spotlight. Joining me today is Renata Reid, a realtor with Sotheby's International Realty Canada in Calgary. Thanks for joining us, Renata.
Thank you, Mario. Thanks for having me again.
Well, as we approach the end of March, and we're into the spring housing market, what's your general feel of how the month has gone and the start of the spring market so far in Calgary?
Yeah, so the market, we have noticed a bit of a shift happening with a few different uncertainties coming up, arising in the market. So there's a political uncertainty and some economic uncertainties that are arising here that we've kind of felt. People are still cautiously moving forward, but they're starting to kind of think about what those futures look like with the uncertainties ahead, and no one's blind to what's happening. It is really something that is top of the conversations of every real estate deal. But people still need to move forward, and their life's not going to stop based on what's happening. So we're seeing that people are starting to just still move forward, but cautiously for sure.
Yeah, I guess when there's big things happening, like you mentioned, obviously we're in the midst of a federal election right now, uh,
Hmm.
and then of course you've got who knows what's happening with the tariff situation. It seems to change every day.
Yeah.
So with that uncertainty, it's hard for people to make the biggest decision, financial decision
Hmm.
they'll ever make, right? And
Yeah.
so, what do you advise people under these circumstances? Obviously that, these things happen all the time. So I'm wondering, in
Mhm.
general, how do you advise clients who are buyers or sellers to deal with these kinds of conditions outside of the market?
Yeah, so I do advise people to be a little bit more on the conservative side when they're moving forward, have a little bit more cash in the bank moving forward. With uncertainties, there's going to be things that happen, whether it's job layoffs or whatever is going to come up with those things. Those are things that, so if you're downsizing, upsizing, make sure that there's, for sellers, you know, make the home as ready as possible for sale. So doing all the touch ups and things that you're supposed to do, so that it isn't as easy sale as possible. What I'm seeing is people are going to start buying more resale homes. I think is going to be a bigger market, like we saw with the last Trump administration. I think there was a lot more people getting into homes that they would renovate versus new
Yeah.
builds. So that seems to be, what we're going to be seeing a lot more of as well again for a time. You know, um, New builds will go forward, but it's just, I think the uncertainty of the cost is going to be a little bit obviously top of mind when moving forward with that stuff. So renovations, I think, are going to be a bigger deal moving forward.
Yeah. Now, now we're looking at the March market in particular, sales have been down, trending downwards compared to a year ago. However,
Mhm.
like listings, I've noticed have increased by quite a substantial margin. Why are
Mhm.
and the active listings, new and active listings, why are we seeing more listings on the market today than say a year?
Yeah, so I believe the reason there's a increase in inventory is because buyers are a little bit scared to move forward, exactly how they were in the past. They were pretty active last year. Inventories were really low. We're double where we were last year almost. And it's that so there's more to choose from. So it's kind of a good market for those that are in the market to buy, like buy and sell, because things are still moving.
Yeah.
But again, it's people are a little bit cautious when they're not so quick to purchase like they were last year. This year, there's a few more uncertainties, so they're being a little bit more selective, taking a little extra time. I think we're still going to have a good market with everything happening because Calgary is still the most affordable place for a bigger city. So we're still going to have people moving here, even with the uncertainties happening. So I think that's, they have just more selection at this point with those inventories being higher.
Now, maybe explain this to me because I always thought, supply and demand, factors kind of worked out, what prices are. But so here we're seeing the sales down, but the supply up. You would think that the prices would go down under those circumstances, right? But the prices are going up. I've noticed that, year over year, the prices continue to rise. Why is that happening?
Well, I believe that's happening because it really is the areas that have low inventory still, even despite the higher numbers, they're still increasing in price because people that demand in those areas is still very high. And it's usually where there's schools and infrastructure is really good. So we're still seeing that trend of increased prices. The price decrease is not going to happen anytime soon because it's really there's still a pretty big demand for housing even though we had this spike in inventory. It's the demand is still very strong, even with the inventory. So I think it's going to continue to trend higher before it goes, if it even goes down. I think it's probably just going to be a steady climb,
Yeah.
as we've kind of the prediction of increased pricing is going to continue here for a while.
All right. Thanks so much, Renata, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mario.
All right, that was Renata Reid, who is a realtor with Sotheby's International Realty Canada, based in Calgary. I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Real Estate Spotlight. Thanks for joining us today.